The Committee of the Whole is now back from recess. It is 9:18 at this time. We will now continue on with Senator Parrish. You had a question yesterday, Senator. Have you was satisfied with the answer? Whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so in the recess, I guess prior to the recess, the question was raised whether by, in the original, the current bill in its form, a Section 4, by striking it out, would that have an effect in reducing Medicaid matching? And the answer was yes. And this is something that Department of Public Health needs to meet their $20 million matching. And so it would reduce the ability for Medicaid matching.
Yes, that was stated during the panel. Oh, do you have anything else to bring up?
Yes, so I just rise in support of Senator Terlahi's amendment to restore it, because I don't, this bill is, the intent is supposed to support Department of Public Health, and especially considering the issue of not being able to access health care, when people lose their jobs. I think this is critical. This is a need that needs to be met, and it's important to restore this part of the bill.
All right, thank you, Senator Pierce. Does any of my colleagues would like to speak to the amendment? I'm not going to ask if there's an objection, because there is one by Senator Torres. So we will now move to vote. All in favor?
I'd like to close.
Okay, you want to close?
Yes,
okay.
because, we left off in the middle of this amendment yesterday, and I just want to refresh everybody's, what we're talking about here. Yes, so Public Law 3536, which was the FY20 budget bill, appropriated $6 million from the Healthy Futures Fund, from the 2018 financial audit balance, to Medicaid. Section 4 of this bill will strike that appropriation for Medicaid. It deletes it. It removes it from the ability of public health to spend it for Medicaid, and instead puts it mostly towards operations. By my amendment, I want to restore this money for Medicaid, keep it locked up for Medicaid. Medicaid is what is paying all these people who've lost their jobs and their health insurance, most especially. It's what's paying the hospital when these people go in without health insurance. It's a whole system we have operating, and we can't afford to not max out federal funds on the Medicaid side. So this money is needed for matching. And so I'm asking my colleagues to restore this by adopting my amendment, which would leave the $6 million in there for Medicaid match, so that we can maximize, get the full Medicaid funds that might become available to Guam. So I'm striking out this Section 4 of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. We will now move to vote. Okay? Please, when you raise your hand, raise it high enough so I can see over the heads. All in favor of this amendment, authored by Senator Therese Terlahi, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Motion passes. We will now go to the next amendment, which would be Senator Therese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next...
Stand by.
Sure.
We'll take a moment recess. We're doing a count. One more time. My colleagues, committee of the whole has returned from recess. Just to let you all know, we did a recess to validate the count. There are 8 votes for the passing of that amendment. Okay? So the amendment passes. We will now move to the next amendment, introduced by Senator Therese. It's, we're going in order, as you see on the drive. So please don't ask to change the order. It's as received is how we're going to entertain it. It's, you'll find it on line 2 to 9, page 1. All right, Senator Therese, you have the introduction of your amendment. You're striking out the notwithstanding any other provisions.
All right, Mr. Chair, I know you're
Okay.
asking us not to rearrange the order, but I think, we've submitted all these amendments yesterday, and the clerk, some of them went on and off of the website. So I would just ask that if we could entertain,
This amendment that I'm entertaining was the last amendment until we recessed and the other additional 2 came in.
I know, but they were
Okay.
submitted earlier. They were just not loaded, at the same time. So, they're all kind of, they intertwine. So I'm only asking just, because I think it's easier to understand if we do,
Okay? First, Senator Therese, you do have one amendment. You don't have no line, no page.
that one.
And I'm trying to understand, where did you plan on placing this? Or you're asking
Yeah, it's a
legal-
new section to the bill, so it just would be at the end of the bill.
Okay.
So it's adding a new section.
Okay, so in what order are you requesting?
I would
the-
like to do that one first, Mr. Chair.
You wanna do that
Yeah,
one first?
Yes, please.
And then what would be the next one? So that everybody is
Okay,
is
thanks.
in sync,
And then
okay?
the others are in any order. They're,
It'll
related.
be the page, the line 2-9,
Sure,
and then
sure, yes.
the line 22, correct?
Okay, yes, thank you.
Okay, then it flows with the bill.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we're, my colleagues, we are on the amendment introduced by Senator Therese that has no line or page number, so it'll be listed on your drive as, stand by and
Okay.
I'll pull it up on my computer also, so we all. You'll find it as the last, second to the last amendment, because there is another amendment that was uploaded. Okay? So it'll be second to the last. And please, Senator Therese, if you can please introduce your amendment so we can go to the motion.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. All right, and thank you to my colleagues. So this amendment is to add another section to the bill, a brand-new section, but what it's doing is taking Section 19 from our current FY21 budget for public health. So I'm bringing in Section 19 from our public health budget, Public Law 3599, bringing it into this bill and amending it to reflect, I think, the author's, intent, which is a good one, to give them everything that's left in the balance of the HFF fund. However, to honor what we did during our budget which was to, split that money with the Cancer Trust Fund, because we had, we're not giving the Cancer Trust Fund the 15% that they are supposed to get, and so this was just to give them part of that. So whatever the balance is left in this Healthy Futures Fund, after the lapses for Medicaid, everything, then it will be given to public health and the Cancer Trust Fund. And so, because that is the good part of this bill, Mr. Chair, and I want to support that. So this just adds in the language to our FY21 budget. It adds in what we said we were giving the fiscal year 2020 fund balance. It's going to add in what the speaker has found, the sponsor of the bills found, that including the amount reflected in the FY19 audit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Therese.
Just a point of order, Mr. Chair. If we
Yes.
could have her read the line and page number. I apologize. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Just
All
so
right.
we're all on the same
Sure.
page.
Yeah, yes, I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Okay, so this is adding a new section to the bill, so there's no line or page number. It's going to go to the last page at the end of the bill. And, the council will have to add a new section, so that's why it's left section blank.
Just so we're all correct, this is AB 400 TMT new section, correct?
Yes. So, so the amendment says section blank. It says to add a new section to the bill, to read section blank, section 19, part 2, chapter 3 of Public Law 3599 is hereby amended as follows. Then it lays out section 19, which says notwithstanding any other provision of law, 85% of the fiscal year 2020 fund balance, and I'm adding the words underlined, including the amount reflected in the fiscal year 2019 Government of Guam basic financial statements, additional information in independent auditor's report, comma, and then goes back to the original section 19 of the Healthy Futures Fund that was not appropriated in Public Law 35-36 is hereby appropriated to the Department of Public Health and Social Services, and 15% shall be appropriated to the Guam Cancer Trust Fund. This allows public health to use it because we haven't specified the use. They are able to use it for all the purposes intended by this bill, and to continue and make it consistent with what we had done in the FY21 budget. So it adds on to that. It adds on anything else that they find even throughout the year. Despite, if BBMR says we can't use any FY20, if they find they are able, then they are able, and they should do it. They should put it towards public health. So this just tries to make it all-encompassing as we go through FY21, that everything available from Healthy Futures, despite it tracking lower, is going to be transferred to these agencies. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask anyone who wants to speak, and I see the speaker's hands. Madam Speaker?
Situus Masi, Mr. Chairman, and Situus, to my colleagues and to the listening audience. With all due respect, Mr. Chair, this amendment, I believe, is not germane. No part of Section 9 was in the original bill, and therefore, we really don't know what the implications may be. And so I want to ask you, Mr. Chair, to rule on the germaneness of this amendment. And if we have to check with legal, I ask for that at this time.
All right, Madam Speaker. We will recess, and I'll meet with legal, and I'll be back real quick. Please stand by. Thank you. Recess at this point.
Merry Christmas. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for that recess. That was very advantageous for me and the author of the amendment to take the opportunity to look at the amendment in its entirety, and based on the numbers that we looked at last night, I want to say the reason for the inclusion and what was reflected in what was provided in the budget, but more importantly, based on the independent audit reports, I see the necessary reasoning why this amendment should be included. So I want to say that I will support the efforts on this and thank the good author for taking the time to work with me and seeing the bigger picture of why we need to make sure that the resources that has been provided and the money that's needed for public health for all its operations, that it would be provided for them. So I want to thank the good author for taking the time. Sana Masi.
All right, thank you. Are there anyone else who would like to speak on the amendment? If not, I'll ask the Senator Teller. There's no objection right now. Okay, okay. Senator Teller?
Sijus Masi, Mr. Chair, and I stand in full support of this amendment. I think this is exactly what we had a long, lengthy discussion of during the budget hearings. And for many years, Mr. Chair, the Cancer Coalition Group has not been receiving what was justly in law given to them for many, many years. And we all had this, I'm not going to get into total discussions. I know that everyone has that with regards to what happened during those lengthy budget hearings and debate on any excess revenue from the Healthy Futures Fund. So I greatly appreciate that we stand firm on what we agreed to in the budget bill, that this bill, we still bring those same morals and merits to this legislation. And that is to recognize the importance of the Healthy Futures Fund and what it was intended for. Most especially for, the Cancer Coalition Group. And it's really important that we stay that course as we create legislation moving forward, as we put our hands into the Healthy Futures Fund, that we remember why the Healthy Futures Fund was really put in place from the very beginning and why this fund was so important. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I stand in full support of this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Taylor. Does any other colleague would like to speak? If not, I'll ask Senator Therese to go ahead and close it, and we'll move to the vote, or if we need a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank my colleagues and especially the speaker for our discussion. And so this, the speaker, when she wrote this bill, they've got all the numbers laid out in their office regarding Medicaid. And we all want to preserve Medicaid. And so I think if we compromise just a little bit here, we are able to ensure Medicaid match to its fullest. And we are also able to capture what the speaker found immediately after our budget was that FY19 audit still had a balance in the HFF. Quickly grabbed it and said, give to public health. And so it's perfect. We're going to take the very real FY19 money and hopefully any other FY20 balance that they find and give them no excuse not to, right? And that we put it right in front of them, they find it and they use it for public health as intended to cover the shortfall in operations. and we don't touch the Medicaid. We leave that Medicaid money there so that we've met our match for Medicaid, hopefully, right? And I think that's a very solid plan going forward. And so I want to, of course, thank the speaker for the work that she has done in this regard. And so hopefully, yeah, we're going to pass this amendment, and then this gives them in general all the amount, that's all the balance, and then remove any of the specific amounts in the later amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Do we have an objection to the amendment? No objection. Motion passes. Amendment is in. We are now on the next amendment, which is, if I'm correct, it's line 2-9, page 1. Am I correct, or is it the line 22?
That's fine, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
So
okay.
if I may just speak generally about both amendments are similar. What they're doing is just taking out the specific amounts where we allocate to Medicaid or operations and letting existing Medicaid operations stay in place, and any of the new money go towards operations. Did I say that correctly?
Sounds
Yes.
good.
Okay, so, yeah, so both of these, just take out the specific amounts so that we allow that full FY19 balance that the speaker found, plus the 20 balance if there's any. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Yes, I see, folks. Did you hear it all, or?
I just want to clarify, Mr. Chair, which
Yes.
amendment we're on.
Okay, we're on,
Okay, we're on the line 2-9, page 1.
yeah, I'll just explain it a little bit further. So it's to delete section B. Subsection B was not in the FY21 Budget Act. It was being added by this bill, and it's specifying a specific amount for the Medicaid program. So I'm suggesting we just delete that, and we allow the lapses from FY20 to go to Medicaid, and not try to restate a number here, and just allow them that lapses. So deleting subsection B from the bill, which would restore the FY21 budget language.
All right. Did that answer the question from the two colleagues? Would anyone like to speak to the amendment? Senator Torres.
Yeah, I'm just if the author was so yield. So in essence, then what this does is it allows more money to go to general operations of DPHSS, including their special projects. Is in essence that's the effect of this amendment?
The three amendments together continue to honor FY20 appropriations to Medicaid, so it keeps those in place, and it takes everything left, including the FY19 fund balances plus FY20 fund balances, and gives it to operations, correct, for any of those projects that Public Health has outlined.
Okay, so that I find good then. That is exactly what we needed to do. Thank you.
All right. I see no other hands to speak to the amendment. Senator Therese, you want to close on it?
No, thank you.
No closing? Are there any objection? There being none, amendment passes. Now we're on the final, or the next amendment.
Yes.
It's line 22, page 2, and it's similar in justification for Senator Therese. If you can please go ahead and read it.
All right, thank you. So this is line 22, page 2. It's going to delete section 3 of the bill. Wait, let me just make sure that's correct. Yes, section 3 of the bill. Section 3 of the bill is another amendment to the FY21 budget, and it lays out a specific amount for operations. And so my amendment would be to delete this entire section. Don't lay out a specific amount, because we're giving them the balance, and we're hoping to give them more than what is even specified here. But whatever the balance is for, again, from the FY19 audit as stated here, and the FY20, fund balance from Healthy Futures. So this is to strike out the entire section 3, which was an amendment to section 21 of the FY21 Budget Act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have an objection? Or anyone would like to speak to the amendment? There being none, are there any objection to the amendment? No objection. Amendment passes. My colleagues, we will now move to the, okay. The last amendment becomes moot, okay, because of what we just passed. I'd ask the speaker if you can please close your bill with the amendments attached.
Situus Masi, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to close in this bill. And before I ask you, Mr. Chair, to move this bill with the recommendations from, for the Committee of the Whole, I just want to take time to thank all my colleagues and for the healthy discussion, but knowing and realizing that public health is the agency that's in the front line of providing resources, services to our residents, but more importantly, taking care of our Manamco, taking care of our foster children, taking care of homeless shelter, taking care of all the senior programs, and more importantly, of course, with the need for Medicaid and making sure that those resources are intact to help our community. I want to say I thank my colleagues for assisting in this effort, and that was always truly the intent, was making sure that our health, it's the government of Guam's responsibility to provide for the basic health care, safety, and education. And in this effort is to making sure that based on the agency's request that needed to be afforded to them, any funding that we could find to assist and help them provide for those basic services, that those will be provided to them. And to make sure that we take care of not just our most vulnerable, but the programs that are already in place. So I want to thank my colleagues, and if it is all right, that I include in as part of the co-sponsorship had Senator Therese and Senator Mary onto, and anyone else who's willing to be on with me, Senator Will, Senator Louise, Senator Joe, and Senator Paris, Senator Legislative Secretary, Senator Marsh-Titano, and Senator Clint, and Senator Pito. I hope I'm not missing anybody, Minority Leader, and Senator Jim. Yes, no? Fine? Okay. So, yeah. To be added on as sponsor, sir.
That's it. On the motion to add for co-sponsorship, are there any objection? There being none, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, and if I may, I move that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole be to place Bill number 400, that's 35 COR, actions on to the third reading file, if I'm saying that properly.
With the committee's recommendation.
With the committee's recommendation.
Yes. On the motion that it be placed on the third reading file, hearing no objection, motion passes. We will now proceed to Bill 396, and I'd ask the MIS to, let's get the folks loaded up on the Zoom. If we need a few minute recess to make sure everybody's loaded, let's just take a few minute recess so we can upload the folks that need to be there, and I think it's GVB, OFB, BBMR, and DOA. And this is 396, it deals with the hot buns. Okay, so we'll take a few minutes recess. The committee of the whole has returned from recess. I think the panel has been put back on. I just need to remind them, we have BBMR, OFB, GVB, DOA, that should be on. And I think the only one that hasn't been sworn in is Gita, Ms. Mindiola. So I'd ask the Sergeant Arms to please swear in, and I ask the rest of the panel members, you were sworn in yesterday. Just to remind you, you're still under oath. So take that note. Sergeant Arms, please, for Ms. Mindiola. I think it's only Ms. Mindiola, unless you see someone else that's there. The person on the right? That's Josie, that's from GVB. She's good.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, it looks like she's ready. Under penalties of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information that you provide, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Chair, she is under oath.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms. My colleagues, we will now begin with Bill 396-35 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing. And it was introduced by Senator Therese. If you could please read the title and discuss the bill, and then we can move on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I move to place Bill number 396-35 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriations, and Housing, which was authored by myself and co-sponsored by Senator Clint Rigel, Senator Josan Augustine, and Speaker Tina Muñoz-Barnes. It is an act relative to approving the terms and conditions to refund all or a portion of the Government of Guam Hotel Occupancy Tax Revenue Bonds, Series 2011A, authorizing the local sale of bonds and appropriating additional funds to the Guam Visitors Bureau for operations. Move to place this into the third reading file and would like to speak on the bill.
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this bill, number 396, would authorize refunding of the current HOT, we call it HOT, HOT bonds, the Hotel Occupancy Tax bonds. The goal is to reduce the annual payments on these bonds. As you know, these bonds, were floated to build many projects on Guam, including our Guam Museum, which was one of the #1 projects in that HOT bond issuance. So the bill would allow GVB to take the savings, if we are able to refinance payments on the bond, and take any savings and use it beginning this year for operations in order to continue to keep the tourism industry viable, put their marketing efforts into the reopening, and despite the tremendous challenges we faced during this public health emergency. So the bill proposes to realize a savings, and these were estimates, based on a February 2021 sale. The estimate in July was that this might be able to save $2.898 million for FY20, and then $3.9 million per year for FY21, and then $3.9 million per year for FY 2022 through 2024. So again, almost $2.9 million, and then $3.9 million a year after that. This would, of course, if they are allowed to use the savings, would bring GVB's budget up from a very mere appropriation of $6 million, 6.3, compared to 22 million in FY20, and this would, of course, allow them the additional 2.9 million. And they testified, in front of us yesterday and at the public hearings and on several occasions as to, really the impact on the tourism industry from this pandemic, and it's drastic. And we're facing a shortfall in TAF, the tourist attraction funds, because of the lack of occupancy in these hotels. Now, BBMR has told us that in FY20, I believe, the TAF fell drastically even during FY20. And so they had to actually subsidize some of the TAF obligations, such as the HOT bonds from general fund and other sources. So we're trying to reduce that obligation that gets paid upfront every year. The cost of issuance of these bonds includes investment bankers, attorneys' fees, GIDA's fees, annual servicing, out-of-pocket costs, dependent on the GIDA board, of course, but they were approximated to be $150,000. All right, so this GIDA has worked closely with us on the language and the percentage that we're hoping to get. And of course, I think GIDA will use its best efforts to get the most value that we can during this issuance. And so, we've given them a minimum, but yeah, hopefully, if better interest rates arise at the time, that they are able to take advantage. And so I think that's pretty much it on the bill. That I don't think I need to expand on all the needs of GVB since we went through that a little bit yesterday. But I want to ask my colleagues for their support of this, to give them an additional 2.9 this year, additional, for the next few years on refinancing of this bond. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Would anyone would like to speak on this bill? No, oh, okay, well, I wanted to ask first, if you wanted to, we have the panel, but I think the opening was quite complete. But if we want, we'll go the round. Senator Kelly, you be first. Do you have any question for the panel in reference to this bill?
Saina Maasi, Mr. Chair. Yes, so I'd just like to hear from Gita the latest in understanding of outlooks as to interest rates and savings, that everything is still looking advantageous at this point, and to what degree?
Yes, thank you for that question, Senator Marsh. The market has been good. The most promising thing I think that affected the market performance has been the development of vaccines in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But what you've seen is in the month of the month of November, we saw the Dow, the S&P 500, Russell 2000. So these are all these are all basically baskets of funds of stocks that represent a broad range of the economy, from your smaller companies, your small caps with the Russell 2000, to your larger companies in the S&P 500. And so you've seen the strongest month they've had since April, so since the outset of the pandemic. With that, what does that mean when it translates into the bond market? What that means usually is that when you have a robust stock market, that means that people are willing to take on, they have a more aggressive outlook as far as the market is concerned. They're more bullish. They may be more willing to take some risks. And so that tends to translate well into the high yield bond market, which is where we sit. So Guam is not rated, we're not a US Treasury, right? So a US Treasury bill is considered the safest investment that you can find. And these are like bonds and bills issued by the US government. So that's generally that's the safety, that's the safest investment that you can get in the market. While the most dangerous and speculative investments might be your small companies located in emerging markets and things like that, right? But when it comes to your bonds, as you're all aware, our bonds are rated. We have bond ratings for all of our different bonds here that Guam has issued over the past several years. And given that, given all the challenges that our tourism industry is facing, we believe that fundamentally Guam is strong. And we believe that the story that Guam tells our investors about the resiliency of our tourism market will resonate well with investors. And that, coupled with the performance of the market as of late, we believe that will all translate into favorable market conditions to enter into this sale. Does that answer your question, Senator?
Hungen Sainamasi for that. Yes, that was something I felt was incredibly important to hear at this point, and it is very reassuring to hear that for September, this is the strongest look again. And it's also very helpful to understand the impact of the vaccine. It's come a little sooner than some of the predictions, but it's something that can make a very important and positive impact. So that was very helpful to hear. So that was my main question for now, but I hope that there are other questions that can create a little bit of a nuanced understanding. Situas Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator Will, do you have any questions on this bill to the panel? Senator Jim? None? Senator Tello, do you have any questions, ma'am? None? Senator Louise, do you have any questions? None? Senator Jose Pito? None? Senator Amanda? None? Senator Perez, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the bill, it states that the aggregate principal amount is not to exceed $75 million. So if perhaps if Director Administrator Melanie Mendiola can explain how that amount was decided upon, or explain that amount.
Yes, this is a refunding, which means that you look at the balance of the existing bond and you refund it. It's kind of like refinancing a house. You look at the current loan balance and then you refinance.
Thank you. And so as far as the debt obligation, so I know the author of the bill mentioned that it should help reduce the debt service. And so what does that equate to? Yeah, if you could just explain that process a little bit more as far as how that is going to affect the debt service.
Certainly, as we look at refunding this particular bond, the desire was for to look for upfront savings. And so what that means is what we're looking for are lower payments at the outset of the bond. So from, let's say, 2022, 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25, to look for lower payments and then flat payments for the rest of the remainder of the term of the bond. With that debt service savings, the savings can then be plugged into, can then be applied to GVB's, towards GVB's strategic needs in the rebuilding of tourism. The overall savings is yet to be determined because it really it's going to be a function of the interest rate at the time of issuance. And so if we're looking at issuance 3-4 months from now, then it's whatever the prevailing interest rate is. Nonetheless, we've seen estimates of, well, just an outright, so the interest rate itself, we're looking for an estimate on savings for the interest rate itself. So if you've done any reading on what's going on with interest rates in the United States, you may have seen that interest rates have been coming down. And part of the reason for interest rates coming down is to stimulate capital activity in the economy. Okay, so versus 2011, we could certainly be looking at interest rate savings at the time of the refinancing, and then the interest rate savings would then translate to overall savings with regard to the payments being made over the life of the bond.
Thank you for that. And as far as the term, the length of the bond itself, is it extended at all, or is it still remain the same?
As far as I can tell, there's no extension on the debt service term. So there's no extension on the term of the bond. It remains the same at 2041 maturity, I believe it is.
Sorry, can you repeat that? What was the
2041 maturity? Okay. 2041.
Okay. Thank you. And then another part of the bill says terms and conditions of the bond shall be as determined by Imagahaga and Guahan by the execution of a certificate or indenture authorizing the issuance of the bonds. So as far as those terms and conditions, is it clear what those terms and conditions are expected to be?
they're generally kind of a canned set of terms and conditions that come with all of our bonds. There's nothing bespoke about this particular bill or about this particular bond. So there's not like, it's not likely that there will be anything that the governor will plug in that would be any different than what we'd normally, the language that would be generally used for all our bond indentures.
Okay, thank you so much. No further questions. Susan Massey.
Thank you. Senator Torres, do you have any questions, ma'am? None. Senator Lee, any questions, ma'am? Please.
Sujus Masi, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of the panel for being here and answering our questions. I do have a question for Ms. Mendiola from GITA, and I think it might have been mentioned earlier, but I think it can also use repeating. So, Ms. Mendiola, if you can provide some details on why now is an advisable time to refinance our hot bond.
Sure. I think, first off, the earliest, when it comes to refinancing bonds, you can refinance, in this particular bonds case, you can enter into a refunding no earlier than 10 years from the original issuance. And so the original issuance was like 2011, right? And so 10 years is 2021. So that's the earliest you can go in. So when it comes to doing things like refinancing, let's say you're refinancing your home. When it comes to refinancing your home, if there's interest rate savings to be made at that point in time, you start to evaluate. Because remember, every month that you go that you're paying 6%, that you could be paying, let's say 4%, is money that you're giving to your bondholders that could potentially, you could be saving or keeping, right? And so that is why the evaluation began, I believe, to enter into it as early as early as next year. Just to kind of to repeat what I shared earlier with Senator Paris, the interest rates have been favorable and have favored substantial savings. The term of the bond isn't being extended, so it's not like we're refinancing and we're pushing our debt further and further away and further into denial, right? We're remaining, it's really kind of a winning situation insofar as the payment savings upfront that you have, the money isn't really, you're not sacrificing by paying a longer term, and you're not saving by, and at the same time, the market has also been favorable insofar as even though the pandemic is what it is, and even though our tourism industry is depressed at the current time, we still have a very compelling story. You know, remember, Guam is still a triple tax exempt environment. And so you still have businesses when you still have investors who have tax issues that they'd like to deal with or take care of with regard to using triple tax exempt. So the combination of all those factors make it a very good environment, we believe, to attempt a refunding at this time.
So just Masi, Ms. Mendiola, and you kind of answered my second question, which was what would give GovGuam the confidence that this refinancing will result in meaningful savings on debt service payments. So thank you very much for that. And then I also did hear your response to a previous question about the current bond's maturation date. So thank you for clarifying that. Do you know if any payment schedules are due to change if we refinance as laid out in this proposal?
Payment schedules will likely remain relatively similar to how it's been in the past. However, there will be upfront, what we are proposing is upfront savings. So in the next couple years, as our tourism industry recovers, there will be a lower debt service than there would be in later years. But it would still overall be level to what's currently being, level to or lower than what is currently being paid into the hot bond payments.
Thank you very much. Do we have a representative from GVB on the panel, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we do. It should be Josie.
Oh, Hafide, Josie. I just have a quick question. If you could give us a little bit more information, where exactly in GVB operations would this potential savings, would this money go?
Senator, thank you for that question. basically, where will it go is for the market recovery efforts. So far, with what we have right now, which it will be discussed on the board meeting, we have sufficient to back up the encumbrances and the contracts that is in place for us to be to continue our market representations overseas, especially to our three major markets, which is Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. And specifically, what we need for this bond savings is that we can cover some of the shortfall if in the event that the TAF will not be coming in, just like what happened with FY 2020, wherein our budget were cut for 7 million, which we had to stop a lot of the ongoing efforts, which some of those efforts can't be stopped because it's already out there, having those advertisement. And so basically, this is for the market recovery.
Thank you so much, Josie, and thank you for being here yesterday and today to answer some of our questions. Tsujoshimasi, Mr. Chair, and thanks again to the panel.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Clinton, do you have any questions? None? Senator Therese, do you have any questions on the panel? None? We'll go on our second round. Does anybody else have a question? I'll have Senator Kelly, but if no one else have a question, we'll end with Senator Kelly. I'd just like to see it. Does anyone have a question? None? Then Senator Kelly, you'll be the last. And then we'll have Senator Therese close her bill.
Assigned to Maasi, Mr. Chair. And of course, we're grateful for any potential savings that are coming our way and increased ability to rebuild our economy. And I like the way that it was framed by Melanie Mendiola of GIDA, that basically paraphrasing what she said, that if we're not refinancing to something more favorable, we're really essentially giving our money away to someone else or to others. And so I think that really helps it be very clear what we're doing. So I know that she said that it's not truly knowable right now what the market will yield in 3 or 4 months, but I just wanted to follow up with what we're seeing in September and what we're potentially seeing as we go forward with the vaccine being administered in increasing levels and so forth. Is there any understanding at all whether the 2.9 million and the 3.9 million might still be achievable, if she could speak to that?
I'm sorry, Senator, 2.9 million or 3.9 million in overall savings?
Yes, so it was mentioned that for this fiscal year, upcoming fiscal year, there could be a savings up to or perhaps around 2.9 million and then 3.9 million each year thereafter. So I'm just wondering if there's any ability on your part to see that something like that might still be achievable with what you're seeing in the market right now.
Yes, I think, thank you for that question, Senator. I think it's it's a keen observation to say that, at the outset of discussion, this is what we were expecting. Can we still expect that? And what we do is at GIDA, we work with our bond underwriters to kind of track what's going on with the markets on a regular basis. And so given that, it's still looking, yes, it is, I guess to answer your question, yes, it's still looking like the savings that was put out there of 2.9 million in the next fiscal and then followed by 3.9 million, it's still looking like those are the numbers that are achievable in the with the upcoming refinancing or refunding.
So just Maasi for that answer. That's very reassuring. I think that it's very good news for all of us to hear, given the changes, the incredible changes that have been happening this year and the crashes that we've been seeing all around us. I really had wanted to hear if we were anywhere near close to being able to achieve that. So the fact that you're still saying that it is potentially achievable just gives additional weight to supporting this measure. Situas Masi, Mr. Chair, for that final question.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. There being no other questions, I'll ask Senator Therese to go ahead and close her bill, and we can move to the, and just to advise everybody, there's no amendment on the web. So we would close and we would move to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to thank my sponsors, and I'd like to thank the panel, those representatives from GIDA and GVB who've worked very hard to keep us on track in regards to this potential refunding, and of course to very much specify. I've asked them over and over, what are you going to use this money on? And they've come up with their opening plan, or it's another name, a remarketing plan, but they've made tweaks along the way as things change. I think they've even seen more cuts. So we've seen definite cuts to local programs such as, bus shelter maintenance and other types of maintenance projects. Unfortunately, we've seen drastic cuts to marketing, across the board, to our major, visitor areas. And so I think, this giving them this additional ability to spend this additional savings is going to help them. It's not going to bring them back anywhere near normal or anywhere near probably what we need to be, but it's bringing us a little, and I hope we can do this swiftly. So I'm wishing GIDA and GVB good luck in this endeavor if this bill is passed, and thanks to my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. And you have a motion, ma'am?
Sorry, I move to that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Bill 396-35 COR be placed on third reading file.
On that motion, that it be placed on third reading file, are there any objection? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My colleagues, we will now move to Bill 415, and I'd like to thank GIDA. I don't think, GIDA, you would be required on this bill. This is Bill 415, introduced by Senator Mary Camacho Torres. I think the only requirement would be OFB, BBMR, DOA. Am I correct, Senator Torres? Would that be correct, ma'am? All right. So thank you, Ms. Mendiola, and thank you, Josie, GIDA, and GVB folks for your attendance today. And if we need you in the very near future, we will call you right away. Thank you. Senator Torres, if you could please introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to place Bill number 415-35 COR, which is an act to appropriate $50,000 from the unexpended funds of the Office of Mary Camacho Torres to the Department of Administration, and to further authorize the transfer of $50,000 from the General Fund Appropriations in Chapter 5 of Public Law 35-99 relative to conducting a study of all positions covered under the nurse pay plan into the third reading file, and I wish to speak on the measure further.
Please just proceed. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Bill 415 is rather straightforward. It recognizes that we have a perennial nursing shortage on Guam, and that wages play a role in that, in the retention of nurses and the recruitment of nurses to our public hospital and our public health agency on Guam. It also recognizes the need to update compensation rates authorized by our previous Competitive Wage Act. The Government of Guam Nurse Pay Plan currently has 38 positions, including licensed practical nurses, certified registered nurse anesthetists, hospital administrators, and school health counselors or school nurses. If the $50,000 provided by my office is insufficient to contract with a consulting expert, the measure further authorizes the transfer of up to an additional $50,000 from the general fund. For comparison, a 2014 OPA competitive analysis and research report, which covered 10 audit positions, titles cost approximately $20,000 to conduct. This would allow for a total of $100,000, which should be more than enough to conduct a study exclusively on these nursing positions. Mr. Chair, it's clear to all of us that our nurses deserve better. And by committing my office savings, this bill holds us to a long overdue study to pay our nurses what they're worth.
Thank you, Senator Torres. We will begin the round of questions, and we will start with Senator Lee, and then we will proceed across. No questions? Senator Clinton, do you have any questions? None? Senator Paris, do you have any question, ma'am, on this bill? For the panel. The panel is present. Got OFB, BBMR, and DOA. Any questions, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I think just thinking about the budget process, how we were looking for, we're scrounging for money. I mean, this bill is a step in the right direction, but I guess my concern is, what if it's not enough, right? And considering we went through this whole budget process and we dedicated funds to agencies, and I guess in this particular bill, if 50,000 is not enough, the other 50,000 would come from general fund appropriations. So I guess maybe the question would be to Director Byrne, you know, is there monies available to accomplish this should the study exceed 50,000? So is Director Byrne.
Thank you, Senator. Can I please say before I start that I'm very grateful to Senator Torres for any funds for any purpose that can come to the Department of Administration. We're always in need of funds because we have these types of duties that are set forth in this bill, which very often are not funded. I'm very grateful for that. So we don't know yet how much this study will cost.
Excuse me, Director Byrne, if you could speak into the microphone, it's hard to hear.
Yes, I am, Senator. I suspect that it will cost $50,000, and this bill provides for the general fund to
Sorry, if you could speak in the microphone, you're becoming more faint.
more than 50,000 from the general fund. One hopes that the general fund certainly will have that 50,000 available to it.
You lost us.
Can you speak a little bit louder, Ed? Or did you freeze? He froze. Okay, so.
Not this. I'm getting a message that the legislature's bandwidth is.
Ed, my colleagues, we're going to do a quick recess. They're going to reset because they're freezing. Okay, so let's take a recess until the MIS advised us that we're back online. Thank you. The committee of the whole has returned from recess. I think the system is already updated, reconnected. Senator Paris, if you could please continue. And maybe restate your question so we can get more clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the staff here for fixing the connections. So, Director Byrne, I don't know if you, I wasn't able to hear your response, so if you can reiterate the response to the question about, where would that 50,000, I guess, is there 50,000 and, where would that come from? Should the amount
Yes,
not be
Senator,
sufficient?
thank you. Yes, Senator, thank you. I hope you can hear me now. The walls of ITC were reverberating over here with me trying to make myself heard. Mr. Chairman, if I could start my answer again.
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Senator Torres, for her bill, which certainly helps DOA fulfill its mandate. DOA doesn't have a lot of free funding since it all comes from the general fund. So I really appreciate this bill in helping us to tackle a task which, as Senator Torres said, needs to be done. As a veteran of GMH, I'm very well aware of the conditions of, in particular, the pay conditions of our nurses and the need to recruit and, as importantly, retain nurses in both GMH and the other healthcare providers on Guam. It's very, very important, and I look forward to being able to carry out this mandate. I do suspect it's going to cost more than 50,000. Obviously, we will frame the RFP for this particular task as economically as possible. There are kind of two things you need to do to make sure you get the best out of a consultant. The first one is frame the terms of reference so that you get exactly what you want answered. And in this case, it's a condition of the nurse's pay. And the second task is to make sure that when you get the response, that they actually answer the question that you want answered and not another question. And you may be sure that DOA will do everything to deliver on that. The general fund is not a treasure trove. We're doing something a little bit different here by looking forward to the general fund to make up a deficit on a requirement that is proposed by this bill. Can the general fund afford it? Well, it's a small amount of money. Hopefully, it'll be less than 50,000. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend up to 50,000. But hopefully, senators, that you will consider this to be an exception determined by the particular need of this bill. And we will make whatever arrangements we can to make sure that whatever amount that is made up from the general fund is the minimum amount that's needed. But to answer your question, Senator, yes, I think we can find 50,000 out of the general fund. It's a very small amount compared with some of the governor's transfer authority. So thank you, but we don't want to make a habit of it.
Okay, further question. Have you identified this where in the general fund, which appropriation would be used? Or where would the transfer come from?
Senator, thank you. That we can't determine until later in the year. We're only effectively 2 months into the year. So it would be premature to identify a transfer. But I will be speaking with the director of BBMMR when the necessity for this expenditure arises.
So another question, for the CARES money, is there still money available, and could that potentially cover any of the additional need? This is for-
We submitted a report to the legislature as of the end of October. There was 41 million. In a few days, as soon as we get all the information together, we'll be submitting the November report. I think I would find it difficult to consider that this particular study should be funded from the CARES Act. Two reasons, Senator. One is that the CARES Act money really, as framed at the moment, ends on December 30th. So this particular commitment is unlikely to be in place by that time, and therefore that it would disqualify CARES Act funding for that reason. And secondly, this is a more general question, and it might be difficult to tie specifically to the response to the public health emergency.
So you were talking earlier about how you frame it, and so are you consulting with anybody to develop the specs or develop the, I guess, what you're looking for in, procuring such a study?
Well, not at this moment. We will base it on the 2014 study, but I've had, in our preliminary discussions on it, there's some things that we could improve in the RFP, and we'll be working on that as soon as this bill is passed.
Thank you, Director Byrne, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Senator Amanda, no questions. Senator Jose Pito, you have any questions, sir? None. Senator Luis Mooney, do you have any questions? None. Senator Tello, do you have any questions, ma'am, to the bill?
Situs Masi, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Director Byrne. Thank you for being here. Been helpful if you were there at the public hearing, because a lot of the questions that we had to do with, for me, was the intent of Bill 415 to replace the nurse pay plan authorization in the Competitive Wage Act of 2014. You alluded to that, but is your assumption of Bill 415 will actually do that, replace the Competitive Wage Act of 2014 and replace it with this plan, if it's implemented?
Senator, it's a study. I think it would be premature to conclude what the result of the study would be. I think we all have a concept that nurses' pay is lagging, and I shouldn't be at all surprised, and nor would you, if the study confirms that. But I think it would be premature to conclude that this will wholesale replace something, unless the study concludes that it is justified.
Mr. Byrne, how many years go by before a survey is taken on wages? Is there a timeline that's usually put into place every 7 years, every 10 years?
Senator, no, there isn't.
There isn't.
We're dealing here with nurses' pay because the governor has made it clear on several occasions that nurses and teachers are a priority. But there are other groups of people who work in the government service who are also lagging behind. So we are certainly looking at trying to bring everything up to date. But funding is obviously a concern, and funding hasn't been made available. This is a good step towards starting.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned something earlier that, there are several other areas within the government too that also need, that this type of study to be done. And, And granted, we're the nurses, of course, are definitely one area that we should look at. I mean, the author of the bill's daughter is a nurse, so this is definitely something that would, help as well, going.
Point of personal
doing this.
privilege. This has
Yes.
nothing to do with my daughter.
Stand by. Senator Tello. Senator Mary, I don't know if your daughter is a nurse, but you may comment.
Please just leave my family members out of the just general discussion.
Thank you. Senator Tello, please.
Oh, I apologize. I was just, the fact that her daughter is a nurse in this study, that's all I was alluding to. Nothing, to offend the family. I'm just saying that nurses, as well as other types of jobs in the government of Guam, also need this type of study too. There's a lot of areas, especially in the professional industry, into the government of Guam, that don't get the proper salaries that we've all been trying to give them. And that was also to my question too, about how many years does it take before we go into some kind of study on salaries. And right now, considering that we're in the pandemic and the nurses definitely are one area, that's what I was alluding to. So, but
Okay.
doesn't help to. So anyways, it was already asked earlier about, Mr. Byrne, you mentioned that it's going to cost more than $50,000. And, but can you give us like a rough estimate, especially if you're only going to one particular profession, the nurses? Can you give us a rough estimate of how much it would really truly cost? Because you said it's going to be more than 50.
Yes, I suspect it's going to be more than 50. I suspect it's going to be less than 100. So
I'm sorry, less than what?
less than 100, which it has to be because that's the only fund. We've only got funding that adds up to 100. It's probably going to be 80,000. But I'm reluctant to give a figure because then the bids would tend to come in at that number. So you may be sure that we're going to do it as economically as possible.
Okay, I see. So, but if it costs more than $100,000, because the bill takes from Senator Torres's funds from her office budget, and then it says here that 50,000 can be transferred from Imagahagan Guahan. But if it costs more, then is the governor willing to? Well, I guess you can't answer that for the governor, so let me strike that. Okay, the second question is, based on this bill that you've read in front of you, would the money go directly into the general fund? Is that your understanding that if this bill is to pass, the money would be taken out of the legislature and go directly into the general fund?
Sorry, Senator, which money?
The funding that's in this bill, the $50,000 from Senator Torres's office budget.
As I mentioned, the Department of Administration is almost all general fund funded. So it would go into the general fund and then be appropriated to DOA.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you. And Mr. Byrne, as I'm watching you on this stream, I look at you and I just wanted to say Merry Christmas, and you look almost like Santa Claus here. I want to sing "Here Comes Santa Claus," but
All right.
Merry Christmas to
Thank
you,
you, Senator.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Merry
Senator.
Christmas.
I can't say I quite feel like Santa Claus yet, but thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays, sir. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Senator Lee, do you have a point of information you wanted to present?
Yes, just a point of information, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify for the record, following some of the comments by the previous speaker, that the mover of this bill, the author of this bill, Senator Mary Camacho Torres, does have a daughter that is a nurse, but she is not employed by the government. So just any information about family members or any indication that there might be some kind of, I don't even know. I'll leave it at that, but
All right.
I just wanted to clarify for the record, Mr. Chair, just a point of information for
Yes.
the body that Senator Torres does have a daughter. She is a nurse, but she is not employed by the government of Guam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Point of personal
I
privilege.
give fair warning to all my colleagues here. Please do not question or infringe on anybody individually, personally, because many of us do have family. There's nurses, police officers, firemen, and so forth. If you have a concern for another profession, introduce the bill and then we'll work from there. That being said, Senator Tello.
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Chair.
Please, and then we wrap it up and we move on,
There
please.
is, anything that I say in this legislature is a matter of transparency to the people, and we owe the people of Guam transparency.
Understood.
And if we know something, Mr. Chair, then I have every authority and power within my office to mention it. And if someone doesn't like it, then they can take it up with me some other way, but I've done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong.
Senator Tello, thank you, but as long as you understand, the statement was clear, it's done. Senator Jim, do you have any questions? None. Senator Will, do you have a question for the bill with the panel?
I do, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to go on the record to applaud my colleague for budgeting the unexpended funds from her office for such a study. I think that's commendable. But I will also disclose that I too have a daughter who's a nurse who lives off island. So I just want to make, and I'm proud of it, and that's okay. My question is for Mr. Byrne. Hafade, Mr. Byrne, and those of you on the panel. There were a couple statements made, and I found it curious. As a matter of fact, this might be an opportunity for the succeeding body in the 36. My question is, there was reference that CARES monies could be used for such a study. I would have to assume, and hopefully maybe you could correct me, Mr. Byrne, could other studies for other healthcare professionals also be conducted with that same funding source, the CARES Act? That's my first question. And my second question would be, based on what I believe to be precedent established here in my term in the 35th, that such monies may not have to be appropriated for the administration to go ahead and commission such a study. That'd be my second point of inquiry. And then my third and final question to the panel, Mr. Byrne, would be, are you aware of any positions within the executive branch that were not covered in the last Competitive Wage Study Act? And I'm sorry, those are three, so I don't know how you're doing this, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask all three? He could take it in any order.
You got 5 minutes, sir.
All right, I don't need all
You've
five.
asked the question, now we wait for the response. Please. Mr. Byrne?
Okay, Senator,
Ed?
thank you for the questions. Perhaps they were three fairly complex questions, so if I proceed and I don't answer them, perhaps you just jog me along.
Okay.
The first one is the CARES Act money. I said in response to Senator Taitagui that I don't believe the CARES Act money can be used for this purpose at all. The CARES Act money, as I say, with present conditions, and it's the hope of everybody in the administration and all over the island that the CARES Act money termination date of December 30th gets extended because conditions on December 30th and just January the 4th, I don't think are going to be that different. But we have to wait for the United States legislature to operate on that one. But for that reason, and because it's not directly connected to the COVID pandemic, I don't believe that the CARES Act money can or should be used for that purpose.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. On the other two?
The second point I didn't quite understand, so perhaps you could you could restate it. But may I answer the third one first? Is that the 2014 CWA study obviously covered those positions that were in place in 2014. Since then, we have created some new positions and in fact clarified some new positions. As I look at some of the positions and their job descriptions, some of them are very, very old, and many of the job activities that are associated with their positions have changed significantly over the years and need to be updated. Yes, there will be some new positions that weren't covered by that we have now that weren't covered at that time and will need to be included should we have the funding to conduct a bigger study.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Byrne, thank you so much for being forthcoming. The second question, it's moot because you answered the first one. You clarified what I misheard. And on the third question about other positions, thank you, because I think it's important, Mr. Chairman, as you continue into the 36, that we look at the Office of Technology, and forgive me, it may not be central to this bill, but it's an important point because I find it to be germane, that the Office of Technology and those positions therein are quite old, and I would encourage you to look at that in the future. Mr. Chairman, with that said, again, I commend the author of the bill. I do not stand in objection to it, and I stand in full pride and confidence with my daughter's achievement. I thank you as well for making sure that the concern, if any, was raised and preserved on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Will. Madam Speaker, do you have any questions to the panel?
I'll try and make this really brief, Mr. Chair. Thank you
Please.
very much. I just want to note that based on the presentation at the public hearing, one of the nurses noted that both public health and GMHA are not being paid adequately, and that's why, based on the authorization that was done in Public Law 3536, that this nursing pay plan study would move forward. On the comparison from DOA, the last pay plan study, when we were working with the previous, like with law enforcement and all that, was the nurse study included back then, even if it was 10 years ago? I just want to get a reiteration for that. And what was the gap between the national standard and Guam's current standard? I think that Ed Byrne, if he has any updates to that.
You have the information.
So, Speaker, thank you for the questions. When I can't answer your question off the cuff in the way you put it, but let me answer it this way. Okay. When the CWA study was done, the study came up with some conclusions. Due to funding issues, some of those conclusions were not fully implemented. And over the years, I made reference to new positions being created. Some new positions were created to try and overcome some of those difficulties when recruitment proved difficult. There was some, if you like, some remediation to the study, but it was done in a way that really didn't relate to the study. It was done by looking at market value. And this covered many different positions, so it's kind of hard to assess what the total amount of the gap was. But suffice it to say, there was a gap.
So there is a big gap. Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to first thank the good author of this legislation for seeing the vision to listen to the cries and the pleas of our nurses out there. And as you know, there are different degrees of the nursing positions, and we are short on every level of expertise that is needed. There are also companion bills out there that the good author has introduced, and I'm saying that for this study to work with the nurses right now, I think it's important that this measure go through, and for the good author to give up funding from her committee to see this authorization go through based on Public Law 35-99, because it wasn't afforded a funding source. I think this is a positive start to know that we care and that we want to see this move forward. So I support those efforts. I think this is really important. But I also realized that based on all the testimonies provided, that there is a big cry out there for those who continue to work on the front lines and those who know that if they were to leave here and work anywhere else, they probably could get literally 5 to 10 times more than what they're getting here. So I support this effort, and I want to thank Ed for at least being honest about the gap. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Kelly, do you have any questions to the panel?
Saina Maasi, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do have a couple of small things. So there was mention about Mr. Byrne thinking that it doesn't fit in with the CARES Act funding, and he outlined that the timeline is real short anyway. But we have learned along the way that if we identify something in law, it can preclude it from some type of federal assistance. So I do want to start off with saying that I do appreciate the possibility of carrying out this wage study for nurse positions. We all definitely understand the nursing situation, the nursing shortages, the relatively low wages that they receive, and something like this can make a real difference in our landscape when we are basically desperately poor for healthcare providers and professionals. So moving in positive directions is definitely commendable. At the same time, I just wanted to understand a few things. So for Mr. Byrne, if we use language like identifying a funding source for the general fund, and we know that there's FEMA and potentially other federal assistance coming in, does this preclude any potential ability, to the best of your knowledge, of availing of that assistance, or not?
Well, Senator, thank you. I don't think it's so much the language of this bill, although we have to make sure that we don't kind of stroll onto the way we deal with federal funding. But I haven't had anybody identify federal funds that would be available for this particular purpose. You know, the idea that federal funds might be available is a nice idea, and certainly I would advocate the use of federal funds for any purpose for which they're intended. But so far nobody has, and I certainly haven't found a federal grant or path to getting this study done, and that's why I'm very grateful for Senator Torres's bill.
Situas Maasi for that, and I just want to make sure that as we're looking this over, that we're dotting our I's and we're crossing our T's, just to make sure that if anything is coming our way, that we can avail of it if possible. And we don't know the assistance coming our way, but I had wanted to explore that. The other thing that I'm working out in my mind, and you know, I know that we budgeted to the last penny, and we really tried to balance each agency against each other and all warm bodies and so forth. And then we were hearing yesterday about GVB, their projections not coming to fruition and the underperformance of certain monies. And so it is a small amount, relatively speaking, and Mr. Byrne pointed that out, and it's for a very laudable cause. But I am still weighing out the potential of the 30,000 can mean a lot to these agencies when they're down to skeletal framework and not having a lot of their operations be funded. But this bill places that authority and that ability for the governor to weigh out all those calculations. So there is that part to it as well. So I guess in looking at the way that it's worded here for the governor's transfer authority, is the way that it's worded here, transfer from the general fund appropriation, is that the governor's standard transfer authority? I mean, it sounds like it is to me, but to Mr. Byrne, I guess. When we
I think that was the intent.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Senator, I think that was the intent. It says is authorized to transfer up to an additional $50,000 from the general fund appropriations in Chapter 5 to the Department of Administration. So I think the intent was to add to the governor's transfer authority.
Sutus Masi, that's how I was reading it, and I just wanted to clarify that. So Sutus Masi, Mr. Chair, for letting me ask those couple of small questions.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator Therese, do you have any questions to the panel?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And just want to say, that this bill, I support this bill. It recognizes that there's a disparity in pay on Guam that puts public health and our hospital at risk of losing nurses to higher paying jurisdictions. That's the reality. And that we must increase nurse salaries, just as we must increase teacher salaries and others who are critical to our health and our advancement today and going forward. Yeah, unfortunately, as you know, the author of the bill pointed out, when she introduced this bill, although it was authorized in the FY20 budget, a study for nurse and teachers was not done during that year. And, of course, GMH was well aware of this nursing issue. This is what they've struggled with for years. Different boards over the years, every administration, and several proposals have gone through trying to, increase the retention of their ability to retain nurses there. And so during this term, they were successful in implementing incentive pay for the hours worked for those at GMH. So that's been helpful. They continue to lose nurses, however. They've also implemented special pay for the ER and the ICUs, my understanding. And thankfully, the chairman of the board at GMH, right now is Teresa Obispo. She's an HR is really her background. So she has taken on this issue directly, I think, and they are currently studying options of how they can increase retention incentives for nurses in particular, and other medical professionals up there at GMH. So this bill will hopefully allow DOA to assist GMH in these efforts and assist public health in how we're going to get their needs met. And we all want to alleviate the loss of local nurses to higher paying jurisdictions, and we want to alleviate GMH's need to pay exorbitant, rates for off-island nurses as well. GMH actually, in an article today, they may be ahead of us because they're looking now for how to pay for the actual changes in wages. They're looking for that amount, which is understandably going to be a lot more than, just the cost of the study. And, but since 1998, as far as I can tell, at least, if not longer, DOA has had as its mandate to review nurse pay. And so I'm talking about 10 GCA 6229 and the whole series talks about nurse pay because it's not, everybody's known about this for many years. And so it goes on about, certification pay differentials, nursing recruitment incentives. It mandates DOA to provide incentives for nurses in the government of Guam, recruitment and retention, incentives. It mandates DOE to review the salary schedules of nurses every 3 years and upgrade them as needed. It says that the nursing classifications under the government of Guam shall be competitive with the national average. And as stated today, we're well below the national average. It mandates that the Director of Administration shall update the class specifications pertaining to duties, requirements, experience of all nursing classifications, and reevaluated every 3 years and changes made as indicated. And so this is urgent, you know, and I guess it's been urgent for several years now. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Byrne, how soon can this study, if you know you get the transfer amount to cover the difference, how soon can it be done? When can we expect it to be completed?
Thank you, Senator. And a mandate, as we all recognize, requires funding. And for the very first time, thank you, with this bill, we have the funding. I can't give you a precise answer to the question you asked, although we will treat it as priority. In DOA, we try and get through the RFP process as quickly as possible so that we can get somebody contracted and as quickly as possible and get through to a response on this. You know, every year we have to deal with the health insurance and getting through that, which is a very complex negotiation. To get this contracted would seem to be a less complex negotiation. And I certainly will put the pressure upon the responding contractor to produce an answer as quickly as possible.
All right. Does this absolutely require you to contract out? You're not able to just do this in-house or in cooperation with, I don't know, whatever resources we have within the government?
No, it doesn't require me to, Senator. Thank you for asking, but I don't have the resources in-house to be able to devote anybody to do this. My department is already struggling with underfunding, so it would be really hard for me to designate anybody out of HR, because it would be HR that would do this, to conduct this additional study.
All right, I'll wait for a second round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Torres, do you have any questions to the panel? None. Senator Lee, do you have any questions to the panel? None. Senator Clint, do you have any questions to the panel? None. Senator Perez, do you have any questions to the panel? None. Senator Jose Pito? None. Senator Luis? None. Senator Tello? Any further questions? None. Senator Jim? Oh, I love this. Senator Will? Madam Speaker? None. Senator Kelly? None. Senator Reese, you can continue on your question. You've got 5 minutes, ma'am. 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So we were talking about, you have to contract out for this. Somebody, I'm imagining like the Hay, who did the Hay study, to do this particular study. Are we able to do studies? No, sorry. Is there any, you mentioned earlier a non-implemented recommendations that were made, in different studies. Were there any non-implemented recommendations for nurses in particular?
I think, Senator, when the 2014 study came in, there was a kind of proportionate reduction of the recommended amounts. And my I wasn't here then, but I believe that the nurses suffered the same proportionate reduction as everybody else, but I would have to check on that.
Is it possible to, have you considered just adopting the original recommended amounts? Would that be equitable or not anymore?
Well, I think it would, you could certainly start there, but, conditions have changed a lot. And, unfortunately, conditions have changed a lot since that time. Lots of things have happened, and, demand for nurses on Guam is, I'm sure, matched by demand for nurses elsewhere, worldwide. So I'm sure conditions have changed, and as we hope to get back to normal, and medical conditions get back to normal, I'm sure it will normalize. But I wasn't here when that study was conducted, and I think it would be preferable to at least look at it with new eyes.
All right, I'm just trying to think of a way to save the money on the study and put it instead to implementing the wages. Yes. So what about, are we able, is there any impediment, legal or otherwise, to changing the nurse salary structure without changing the rest of the salaries across the government that were affected by the 2014 Hay? For example, yeah.
No, we can do that, and we could just, we could take an arbitrary amount and say, we're going to change the nurses scale by that. But I think it goes a bit beyond that. And if I could be permitted a personal view on this myself, right? My daughter started at UOG in the nursing program, but she found it so difficult to get classes that the whole process was going to take so many years that she changed her major. So there are a whole lot of things just beyond pay. There are working conditions, and I would certainly want to make sure that working conditions are included in this study. To my mind, it's an important part of an employment consideration.
I agree. And so, yeah, we've seen, prior legislatures affect, for example, law enforcement pay alone, right? And so hopefully, we've seen lawsuits in the past as well, when one category's pay was affected and not others. So hopefully, yeah, I'm really looking to the end of this, that how soon can we implement it? How can we implement it? Are we going to be able to find funds to implement this in FY21? That's, I think how soon it is needed during this fiscal year to actually pay
Yes.
the affected salaries.
Senator, that's a big question, yes.
Pardon? Pardon, Mr. Burns?
That's a big question, yes.
Oh,
Thank you,
okay.
Senator.
Yes. Yeah, all right.
That's a big question, is that having conducted the study, we actually have to find the funds to implement it.
All right. Okay. Well, hopefully, I hope that, you can achieve this, sooner rather than later, and then we can all put our minds to implementing it. So, Situs Masi, Mr. Byrne, and thank you again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Mary Torres, if you could close your bill and make the appropriate motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, clearly this bill is one piece towards addressing the big issue on Guam with regard to the recruitment and the retention of nurses to our island. I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, and move that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole be to place Bill number 415-35 on the third reading file.
If there are no objection to that motion, no objection, motion carries. Senator Torres?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation that bills number 353-35 COR, as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, bill number 400-35 COR, as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, and further amended in the Committee of the Whole, bill number 396-35 COR, as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, and Bill number 415-35 COR be placed in the third reading file.
On that motion, are there any objection? Hearing no objection, motion carries. My colleagues, we will recess until 2 p.m. and then return, but we'll be moving out of the committee of the whole. All right? Thank you.